What I want to talk about first, I'm going to share my screen right away. Everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, that's good. This photo here, which I posted on the NER Facebook group, and I posted this with a question asking which rider here is going to more successfully or more likely navigate this hairpin turn. And I got quite a few different answers. And not that there were any wrong answers. There were a couple of them that might have been questionable, but there are some different answers to this. But there's one better answer, and I'll tell you what it is. First off, where is this? This is in the Alps. This is one of the trips I've taken with Rob Beach and Beach's Motorcycle Adventures. This up here would be Rob and Gretchen leading the group down here. Anyhow, what these photos and videos don't really show very well just how extreme these hairpins are. And this is a pretty steep downhill, and the hairpin will actually come back on itself. So it'll be more than 180 degrees. And that's very typical. And I have some photos showing you what that looks like. So knowing that, you have to treat these corners almost like slow speed U-turns in a parking lot because you're going slow enough. You can see here that's 29 kilometers an hour. So it's pretty slow. And I'm still slowing as I come into this corner. So trail braking is real important. We're going to be talking about that. I'll probably maybe show this slide, this photo again when we talk about that. So just to kind of, describe the scene. So I'm approaching this corner. Everybody else is that's in front of me, and I can see there's nobody coming in the other direction. So that does give me a little bit of leeway. These turns are so tight that there are times when I will go out as far to the outside as this rider in front of me, but typically not. I like to challenge myself by staying fully in my lane, even if I have the option of going out because there's nobody coming. That's just something that help skill development and just sort of a little challenge, like I say. However, setting up wide, this person's got the right idea, because the wider you can set up, the larger radius that this will be. So there's your most basic start of talking about cornering lines is to enter the corner from as wide of a lane position as you can. Now, one thing that just puzzles me, how many people say, well, what if there's a car coming? Well, the answer is then don't do it. It's really about, do it only when it's safe to do so. These are strategies that you use when you can do them, and they don't always make sense. But we're going to be talking about the strategy, and then there will be times when you'll realize that, well, I would ideally like to do this, but I can't quite see this little schmutz in the pavement here, so I'm gonna not get myself set up as wide as I would have normally. I'm gonna keep my eye open for that, and I'm gonna avoid it. So then you're gonna take the corner maybe to the inside farther than you would have ideally wanted to. But the basic definition of a cornering line that we tend to aim for is the outside, inside, and exit toward the outside. But even if it's like the middle of the road at the exit, that's sort of the aim. And why? Well, on the street, first of all, it's the straightest way through a curve, which means you use a less lean angle. So that's a safety issue, and that your less lean angle means more safety. More lean angle means less safety, and that means part of that is because of traction. Because the more you lean, the more traction you use. So the outside, inside, right in here, at the apex, you can call it, and then an outside or middle exit, that gives you that on the street. On the racetrack, a lot of people call this like a racer line. Well, it is because it makes sense on the racetrack too, not because it's exclusive to racers. And again, it just makes it the straightest way through a corner. So back to this photo here, when we've got an outside entry, I'm choosing to stay a little farther to the right. Let's see where my cursor is here. And then I'm going to swing around and I'm going to come in and I'm going to be right where Rob is, right here, right along the inside, as tight as I can be. at the exit. So your exit is sort of your report card. And if you end up out here, like at the middle, if there was a painted line at the center line, you messed up. And we're going to talk about why. You can actually see in this photo somebody who's about to mess up. They're going to end up almost in the oncoming lane. And hopefully you can kind of visualize which person that would be. And it would be this person right here, number 2 in line. He turned in too early. And this is typical. When we're anxious, we turn in too early. It's just a human trait. So not that he was necessarily nervous. He was kind of, this guy here had a lot of, seemed a little fearless, but he made some poor choices. But just look at where his motorcycle's pointed. Very clearly pointed into the oncoming lane. And you can see where Rob is. He's only, 10 feet, if that, in front of him. You can see how Rob is pointed to safety, which is down the lane. So that's danger, and that's safety. Okay. Now you can argue back up here that this rider here is this person set up for success at the exit. And the answer would be yes, if they can get the bike turned and they create a V, and that's what gets the bike to be pointed to safety. So you let the bike come out a little bit, as long as it's safe to do so. If there's a bus coming around this corner, heck no. I'm going to be coming in and staying in the middle and even to slightly to the right of my lane to stay away from an oncoming vehicle or any other sort of hazard. But this is the ideal, is to go out and make a bit of a V shape so that you're pointed to safety, right? Which that requires you to go out a little farther and have a pretty assertive counter steering action to get the bike from, it's going to be leaned, you're leaned here, but then to lean more right in this area. And then to get you in toward the apex. The innermost part of a turn here is all the way over here. Now there's a geometric apex, which would have it be right here where this guy is. It's sort of the middle of a circle where the line would then apex or touch the innermost part of a circle. But we want to use a delayed apex, and that puts us out wide so that we're actually apexing all the way over here. If you apex here, where this guy's doing, we just talked about that. You're now pointed to the oncoming lane. So the thing, we were just talking about you, Rob. You're an example right here. So this rider here can make the turn. I mean, if I recall right, he did stay in his lane, but he's going to have to make a very tight turn here to stay in his lane. So he's actually made a turning input back here somewhere. And now he's going to have to make a second turning input in here just to stay in his lane. So just because he turned in too early, he's now got to fix it. And he has to crawl through here. He can't get on the gas, because remember, when you get on the gas, that's what points. And if your bike's pointed to danger, you get on the gas in that point, you're going to then start heading toward danger. So you have to be patient. And this rider here cannot get on the gas until he's got the bike squared up and pointed to safety. So there's all sorts of problems with this. Now, again, you can argue, it's like, well, I can make that. Yeah, you'll just have to go through a lot slower, and your options are much narrower than if you go out here, again, as long as it's safe to do so, and then you drop the bike in, and then you bring it in, and you're pointed the way Rob is here down to safety or to the straightaway. All right. So I see this all the time. This is the one thing that I coach mostly with more challenging corners, is that people just turn in too early. Like I say, I mentioned earlier about trail braking. Trail braking is part of this. That if I were to approach this dynamically, I would be trail braking into here, and I would be holding the rear brake to probably about right here. I'd get off the front brake fairly early because it's already approaching it rather slow, and the front brake is going to then slow the bike too much. But the rear brake helps keep the bike tight. So I'll release the front brake, but I'll hold on to the rear brake a little bit longer, and that just keeps the bike a little tighter. So we'll talk about braking technique. I think that's our third seminar. Let's see, what do I have here? I'm going to start with showing you a video. All right, now watch this. Woo!
Wow.
All right. So this is what we're talking about. See, he turned in too early. First of all, he set up way too wide in the oncoming lane, but he turned in too early. And see where I am? I'm heading all the way out here. And I'm going to end up, I'm target fixating on him, so I end up wide myself. I would be aiming for being right along the, right here. That's my target, is right along this white line. And the only way to do that is to set up and stay wide and then make a V right here to get yourself in tight. Again, I target fixated on him, so that was that. All right, stop sharing. I'm going to share again. There's another video. Okay, we just saw. Okay. You see this one here?
Yes.
Handle these secrets. So Dave is struggling.
Okay, so you see that. This is another more dramatic example of just turning in too early. It's a very tight turn. These are not easy turns. You almost have to treat these like parking lot U-turns. You can see he's got his foot out. He's not turning his head. Part of it is he just froze, you know. But the turn in, again, we're talking about the cornering line. The fact that he turned in so early caused him to just point himself to the oncoming lane. See where I am way out here? And I'm going to end up coming right in tight to the white line. And I'm pointed up the hill. Yeah. So again, another example. I got more. Well, first of all, let's look at this one. Actually, it's the same one. I want you to notice where this rider is here. Look at how close he is to the oncoming lane. So going uphill to the left, it also requires you to stay wide. And again, the same thing happens, even though you're staying in the right lane, the uphill lane in this case is the right, you still have to swing out wide. Look at where Rob is. He's in the red bike in the lead. Look at how far out he is. So he's going to hang all the way out here, and then he's going to make his turn. It's going to be more or less like a V, and that's going to get him up the hill pointed safely. This rider here is turning in too early, and now you're going to see the result. First off, he's in really, really tight because he turned in early, and you see how he's lean still. He's still leaning. Rob is not leaning anymore. The red bike. He's fully out of his lane because he got all of his turning done back at the V point. And he can get on the gas safely. This rider here has to be more patient about it. And what's the importance of getting on the gas? It's not about speed, it's about stability. So with these really tight turns, you're going to end up going rather slow. And one of the dangers is going so slow that you tip over. You probably have seen videos of people on the alpine passes where they are going up these tight turns and then they just stall and then topple over. So getting on the gas is important for your stability. Let me throw this one away. So this rider here, a lot of people thought that this rider was going to go into the oncoming lane, but this rider is set up perfectly for doing the V and getting himself pointed safely down the lane. So this would be your goal. But if you are not confident, or your ability to countersteer isn't great, or your confidence in getting the bike turned isn't really good, then you're going to panic if you were out with this rider here. You're going to want to do this. This feels safer to everybody. It feels safer, but it's not. It's actually much more dangerous. And we talked about why, which is, you can see that the rider's pointed to the oncoming lane. He's going to have to turn a second time or tighter just to stay in his lane. Okay, so this is the Stelvio Pass. So this is the aerial view of what we were just on. And what I'm going to show you is just, the points which are going to, hopefully help you visualize how you get up through a series of curves like this. the red dots are your exits. We're going up, you can see the arrows. We're going from right to left. So we're going up the hill like this. Your exits are your target, and those are these red marks here. So you can see this red line is showing your entry, which is wide, the V, and then your exit, which is that dot. And it keeps me to the outside of my turn, but pointed, you can see I'm pointed safely up the road. And if there's a car here coming down the way, I'm just going to stay even a little wider. I'll have to go a little slower. And then I'm going to hook, I'm going to make my V a little bit farther out here. All right, but the idea still is to not cut in. You cut in like this and you got problems. This is the wrong way. This is what a lot of people do, and this is what they end up getting into trouble. Certainly if there's a car coming. So this is the wrong way. You're going to still end up, you can see, at the exit, but look where you're pointed. All right, because this was a sluggish turn and it was turned in too early. Let's do this corner here. All right, again, this is the proper line because there's your exit. We're going up this way. Again, look at the arrows. Going up this way. I'm in the right lane. I'm going to follow this. I'm going to let the bike come out, and then I'm going to make that V, and that's going to get the bike tight to where I was showing you in the video, right along that white line, and then point it up the hill. So the incorrect way, oops, is this white line. So again, that's what the rider who we saw in the video did. So it comes in just too early, and there's he's apexing here, and the bike's pointed toward the oncoming lane. So you can't really, to get yourself over to that white line, you'd have to go so slow that you then risk falling over, and having a stability problem. So I'm trying to sell you on the fact that this is an important strategy to follow. Again, if you're kind of not confident about getting your bike turned, this is going to feel scary. But that's why we work on this. That you got to know that you can get the bike out here, get it turned, get it into the lean, and get it pointed where you need it to be pointed. Now let me turn this off because we also go up hills or go the other direction. And this is the other direction right here, where the yellow dots, forget this black here, the yellow dots are our exit targets. So I'm coming down the hill like this. I'm going to make my V. Sorry, wrong lane. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to let the bike come out, and then I'm going to bring it back because that's what's going to get me into that target. If I were to do this, come in, I'm nervous, I turn in. I got to make a second turn. This is going to be really scary right here, especially if there's a big bus coming in the other direction. And again, I wanted to point this one out too, because once we get through this corner, which again, we're going to set up wide, I'm going to come around, but right here is as you come through this corner, that's your target. It's not here. So especially now you're picking up speed. If you were to apex here, you're going to be pointed this way. So you come around the corner and you point yourself that way. All right, so even a bend in the road that's really not, a hairpin turn, because most of the turns we have out here really aren't hairpin turns. They're these kind of bends in the road. But that shows you that even that, you want to look for your apex is always around the corner. Typically, it's actually just before the straightaway. So, get rid of these. And what I mean by that is, so if this is your apex, turn this on. If this is, sorry, we're in the right lane here. We're going to remain in the right lane. So here's our V point, and then there's our apex. It's going to be just before the straightaway, right there. That's your straightaway. And every one of these is going to be just before the straightaway, even
just before, okay.
Just before the straightaway, correct. Okay. And that's just a general rule that I found that really works. It really forces you to take a really late apex. Again, coming down this way, we're in the right-hand lane. So we want to let the V come out. Again, if it's safe to do so, I'm going to come out to here, and then we're going to end up at the exit point. And again, just before the straightaway. Okay, this one here. Now,
Bingo.
all right. So here's a a sequence from a video, and you can see this rider right here approaching this corner. You can see he's turning in too early, and he wants to be over here. And where he's turning, he's going to have to go really, really slow to get himself over there. So we can watch. Here's the second slide in that series, and you can see where he is. And there's where he started. That's where he is. This is where he ends up. At the middle, you can see he's completely pointed to the oncoming lane. You got to hand it to him. He's got a good head turn though. And then you can see here the next sequence. You can see how much farther he's going to have to turn. He's got that handlebar cranked really tight to keep himself inside his lane. And again, that's not giving him many options. So if he was able to just let himself come out a little wider and make a V out in this area, then he could have gotten himself pointed to safety up here. So this was another photo that I showed on the Facebook group. And I just wanted to point out the difference, that this person's doing okay, right? He's pointed down to safety, but look at the options. He doesn't have many options. He's got himself going a little bit wide. And if there was a car coming this way and cutting the inside, he'd be in trouble and he'd have to fix it. And that would be a problem. But as if he was over here, he would then have lots of room away from any possible hazard oncoming lane. So again, that's your target. And you can see again, like I've talked about, it's right along the white line right here. And that's where I'm headed when it comes to where I am. I've got myself, started to turn in, but my target's going to be right there. And I'm going to follow this arrow here, and I'm going to be pointed safely up the middle of the lane. So that's again, another illustration of what of what I'm talking about. Nice setup. This is Rob Beach again. This is Stelvio. This is that really crazy road. Look at how he's set up. Nice. He's not turning in. Look at how wide he's going. He's following all the way around the outside of the turn, right where he wants to be. And that's going to allow him to again get the bike straightened up and pointed down the straightaway. Okay, that's well done. Now he can get on the gas and point himself down the straightaway. However, watch this little tidbit.
Whoa.
So this guy in the gold wing felt like he needed the full width of the road to make this turn, and so he ended up basically in a trajectory with Rob, a head-on turn, a head-on collision. So that's just showing you again that if you're not confident with cornering, this is something you really have to work on. There should be no need for you to use the full width of your lane. Again, even if coming out to if there was a center line, come out as far as you can, if it's safe to do so. But you got to get that bike turned and get it V'd out so that you get in tight to the apex. And I'm going to back this up to show you where that would be for this rider, for this gold wing. He would come in this way. He would hook it around with the V and end up right over here. You can see where my cursor is. That's his goal. So he might have been trying to do that, but he needed every inch of the road. That doesn't cut it. So, okay. So again, this is a downhill, tight downhill. Again, video flattens everything out, but you can kind of see how steep that is. This corner is going to come back on itself. You can kind of start to see that over here, that it's not just going to be an easy 180. It's going to come back on itself. So again, I've got Rob Beach again in front of me. It's a perfect example of how to do this. He's giving himself lots of room, but you can see that van. If he had cut that in early, he would have been pointed right to the back of that van. So, but he kept himself wide. He probably saw that van before he ever turned in. I mean, you can see that. He's using, goes out to the center line and cuts in tight. So there it is, right there. That's where you need to be. And this corner is so tight that it ends up being almost like a parking lot U-turn. So my front tire is going right over that little point of where the paint is. That's why the paint is this way. Is to, the road designers are saying, hey, this is a really sharp turn. So that would be how you handle that. Now this is where I'm dragging the rear brake right here to try to keep the bike straight. And then once I get the bike straightened up, then I can get off the brakes and on the gas. And here I would also talk about body position. I'd be counterweighting a little bit, just like you would do a U-turn in a parking lot. See, I had to make that turn. I'm still making the turn.
Recording.
And now I can get on the gas. We can still see I'm still finishing my turn to stay in my lane. I want to show you this again. I've got a lot going on with Europe, because it just shows you there's just a lot of examples are extreme examples in Europe. These little white arcs here, they were, I believe it was in Rob can correct me, Switzerland, was it Austria? They have Austria. They have these arcs here to keep you away from the center line. And they're you can see them, they're kind of going off in the distance. It's basically to remind you not to get tight to the center line. So, and they're actually really cool little reminders. When I first looked at them, I was like, what are those things? And then it's like Kilroy was here. And but that's what they're for, is just to remind you to stay away from that center line, as if you needed reminding. This again, I believe. Okay. So you can see this video, correct?
Yes.
So give me a yay.
Yes, we see.
Yes. Yep.
So this is Mount Greylock. If you know this road at all, that's a tight uphill turn. Now I want to point out, you can see how it looks like I went in the oncoming lane at the exit. The camera is on my left handlebar, so it looks like I'm over the line, but I'm not. My wheels are definitely inside. And the only reason I would cut in like that is that I can see that there's no car coming. So I'm going to stay wide as long as I can. This takes some guts. I mean, I bring students up here all the time, and most people are already turning in. But you have to follow this white line. You see my front tire is like out here. And then as I see there's nobody coming, and now I'm looking up the hill and I see there's nobody coming, I'm going to go ahead and cut in, partly because this is off camber now. So my line is going to, I have to make a compromise. If I were to follow the white line all the way around, that camber's off, and there's also dirt over there. So I do need to, and it's narrow, so I do need to cut in. If there was a car coming, I would just be going really slow, and I'd be going all the way around the outside, but no car coming. So I can cut in, right there's the apex. Again, my tire is not, it's pretty darn close to touching the yellow line, but it's not. Okay, and so we go up the hill some more. So again, you can see here that I couldn't quite see around the corner, so I'm not going to cut in. You can see I made a V right there. I turned. Okay, it's a much more dramatic turn as opposed to just kind of cutting in, where then I don't know what's around the corner. So I'm going to hang out that wide entry, cut in right in tight, because I want to be right here. I don't want to be out here. So if I didn't make that tight, that decisive counter steer, then I would end up off toward the center line, and I didn't want to do that. So that's an example of needing to be confident and assertive with your counter steering. So let's continue up the hill. So I'm setting up wide. Looking up the hill. My apex is going to be right here. See, it's around the corner just before this little straightaway, so I'm going to aim for it. Nobody coming. Again, if there's somebody coming, I'm definitely in the middle or even to the right of my lane. Okay, so this is a hill, uphill. Those of you have ridden Greylock, this corner. Can't see through, you can see a little bit through the vegetation, depends on the time of year, but I'm going to set up wide, and then I'm going to stay wide because, again, I want to be along the white line up that hill. So don't turn in yet. Now I'm going to turn in. I'm going to get right in toward that white line right over here. And so there's your goal. Is right there. That's where I want to be, not out here. Almost everybody I follow ends up out here until, my coaching just encourages the student to wait. Just wait for it. And so that's all examples of why it's important to adopt this strategy. Again, I got a couple more examples. The apex is around the corner. Even on those bends, I'm still thinking in terms of exits and apexes. There's another almost identical to that first left-hand turn. It's a hairpin going up to the left. Again, these aren't hairpins really. They don't come around on themselves like the Alps, but they're, it's a 90-degree turn that goes uphill fairly tight. And staying wide, nobody coming, I'm going to drop in. And there I am right there. Pretty much still staying with my tires in the middle of the lane. So this is an example of, me staying a little bit farther away from the line than the first one. Okay, and here's another turn almost identical to the other one. Stay wide, not yet, don't turn in yet, don't turn in yet. Okay, now turn in, boom, there was my counter steer. And there's where I end up, right there along that white line, not out here. Okay, and now I'm pointed safely, I can get on the gas and I can let the bike drift out, because you've probably heard the outside, inside, outside path of travel, which has you exiting toward the outside, but that's optional. If you do this, you can choose to let the bike drift to the outside of the lane. In this case, would be the left portion of the lane on right-hand turns. But if you get it pointed right, you are able to stay tight. If there's an oncoming car, you wouldn't want the bike to go wide. If you're already wide, you're going to have to fix it and get yourself away from the oncoming car. It all starts back here, where you turn in. And again, right here, I'm going to make a pretty assertive counter steer right there. And that gets me right up the hill. All right, let's see if there's anything else up here. So even here, I think I had another. So it's a blind hill. Stay away from the yellow line. I'm going to set up wide here. My apex is going to be around the corner. I can't see around the corner, so I'm going to stay wide away from the traffic and start to see there's nobody coming. I'm going to work my way over, not too dramatically, and then nobody's coming. And there's my apex right in here. And that just straightens the corner out, so it makes the radius wider. I want to just open up to any questions you guys have. So we have the chat going. We got 10 chats. Let me look and see what we got here.
Ken, I had one typed in, and my question is, so would it be better to turn in a bit late rather than too early?
Typically, yes. So a later turn in, as long as you have the wherewithal to get the bike turned, and that's again assertive, confident counter steering, then turning in a little later is typically going to give you that lane position and directional that you have at the apex, and that's where you really want to focus on. Is that's your report card? Is if at the apex, if you're having to correct to tighten your line past the apex, that means you turned in too early. So yeah, as a general rule, a little bit later would be the way to go. Discipline yourself to wait and then turn in and make a V, more of a V and less of a U out of your turn. Good question. Anybody else? engine management, shifting, spirit, clutch management. Oh, during turning up and downhill. So that gets into less about the cornering lines, which I wanted to focus on, but that's a great question, is how do you, what are you doing with your brakes, your throttle, your shifting and all that? When it comes to shifting, I get people say, well, what gear should I be in? The answer is the right gear. It's the gear where you're not over revving and you're not lugging so that you don't have power. Particularly on these uphill hairpins, the danger is that you're going to stall or that you're going to go so slow that you lose stability and you feel like you have to put your foot down, then you topple over. Not unlike in the parking lot. Now, though, with these hairpin turns, including like at Mount Greylock, is you've got elevation, so you've got slope, and that adds a lot of complication to it. So when you're getting your bike into the turn, you have to give yourself the momentum, particularly uphill hairpin turns, get into the right gear early and get yourself turned. And on those really tight turns, sometimes you have to actually squeeze the clutch like you would do in a parking lot. They're that slow. And you would counterweight just like you would do in a parking lot. And then you'd ease out the clutch and get yourself up the hill. But you have to make sure you're not going to, if you do squeeze the clutch like that, that you're not going to coast to a stop. And remember that the uphills, the steeper the uphill is, the quicker you're going to slow down. So you have to kind of keep all that stuff in mind when you make that decision. In engine management, keep the revs up. Generally speaking, keep your revs up. Don't be afraid to, at least be in the middle of your rev range, if not a little higher. That's sort of, again, a general rule. Some bikes you can lug a little more, but you can't really go wrong with just a little bit more revs, a little more access to your power. Now going downhill, you've got the challenge of controlling gravity, the effects of gravity, and that means your braking, and trail braking is key. Otherwise, you're going to kind of careen down the hill, and if you let off the brakes when you're straight up and down, gravity's going to shoot your bike forward, and any acceleration is going to, if your bike's pointed where you don't want it to be pointed, you don't want to be accelerating. So your brakes are what are going to keep that under control. And so your trail brake, you hold the brakes around the corner. I'll get off the front brake and then I'll get off the rear brake as I then transition to the throttle. So it's all about timing. Matt Vino, hey, Ken's street training worth it? Yeah, it is. So I've got the schedule on the Riding in the Zone website for 2024. People are signing up now. I have limited dates just because I want to ride too. So I've got some, I got a fair amount of dates, about this average of what I usually do. I am putting up 4 parking lot courses this year because they tend to fill up, and I can get a lot of people trained for some pretty short money on your end, especially if you do the BMW MOA scholarship. So that's something I'm hoping to get everybody involved with. This is the parking lot course, and if you do that, and then you come to the street training, and then come to the non-sport bike training day. That you've got the trifecta right there of training. It's pretty strong. So there's my plug for that. Thanks, Steve. So that's all I got for you. If you have more questions, please, I'll be here, for a little bit. But just let me know what questions you have, something I didn't, cover well, or just something you just have always wondered about. I would love to hear from you. Yeah. So, to wrap up, I still had a lot of folks here. I love having you here. That I just want to point out again that your lane position when you're riding is just so critical on the street, just for safety. And we talked about the outside entrance, and that's something I didn't elaborate on as much as I should for street riders, which is one of the big benefits is getting a good look around the corner, because we have a lot of blind turns out in New England, out there on the roads. So to get as good a view around the corner as you can, that should itself give you the incentive to set up wide. And then your exit should be your next point. The apex is sort of the point between. So think about where the apex is, but if you're exiting correctly, your apex doesn't have to be, set in stone, but that apex, the exit has to be done so that you're pointed to safety. Hopefully that was helpful. Thanks for coming. Next week, or was it, I forget, it's next week. I think it's the week after. We've got another seminar coming up too. So, and I'm going to do 3 of them this this winter, then I'm going off to New Zealand to ride motorcycles with Rob Beach. And that's in February and March. So I will be away. Anyhow, thanks everybody. I'm going to end the little seminar. So take care. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
All right. Thanks, Ed.